Yes, what's happening, y'all? Welcome to the Powerhouse Man Podcast. I'm so excited. This is episode 1. And I'm so excited to have my man Sumedh Chatterjee. I'm going to talk to him in a little bit. I was just on his podcast. I'm going to be giving you all of his information. He's got an awesome program. He's helping men all around the world, and he's going to help us here today on episode 1. Just in case, though, you're brand new to this channel, welcome to my YouTube community. Welcome to the Nakula Das. Excuse me. Welcome to the Nakula Das space. You know what I mean? We've got this channel has been generally focused on practices like semen retention and no-fap, helping men master their sexual energy. I am the general of the semen retention army and a sex guru for the Powerhouse Man podcast is taking it up a notch. How do we use all of that energy that we're cultivating from our sexual discipline? How are we as men showing up in the world? That's what this podcast is all about. And I'm going to be bringing inspired guests, experts, men to help you become a powerhouse both in and outside the bedroom. So let me introduce my man Sumedh here in just a sec here. Actually, I got a cool little bio I want to read there, giving you some of his background, his expertise. Sumedh Chatterjee is a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology and a flow state catalyst who merges high performance with mindfulness and spirituality. He's the founder of the coaching program Flow Zone Academy, where he takes people through his healing process called Flomo Sapien, which we're going to ask him about in a little bit. He helps people face their fears and find their own genius zone. He's battled himself with anxiety, with depression, and has been able to take that, spark his own awakening, and give all the tools, all the challenges that we face, and move above the status quo to become what I call a powerhouse man. Sumedh, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, brother?
Phenomenal, man. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, man, it's really cool to collaborate like this. I love this, podcast collaborative mindset. I'm ready, man. Let's get into it. Let's get tapped in.
Yeah, man, let's do it. I love that idea of getting tapped in. Now, let's just dive right into it because you've got this awesome, you talk about the flow state. So first of all, can you define the flow state so that we know exactly what we're talking about when we use the word flow?
Yeah, man. So I think the easiest way to describe the flow state would be a state where you feel your best and you perform your best.
Feel your
Right.
best and you perform your best. Is that in all areas or is that just a specific area? Like, I'll give you an example. What I'm thinking of, I hear of like guys like athletes, for example, talk about getting into flow, getting into that flow state. When you see LeBron James and you can't touch him, right? It's like,
Yeah.
is it in one aspect or is it in all aspects of our life?
I would say it's definitely all encompassing. It really depends on your craft, right? Like, for instance, you said athletes. Athletes use that term getting in the zone, right? To say getting
Right.
into the flow state. And so, an athlete has this actual physical risk, whereas an artist is someone who has an emotional risk, right? And so they both use flow state in their own ways, though. So it's all about your craft. It's all about what is that task that I want to master, and it's all about that state of unconscious competence, of mastery, where you're like, yeah, I've got this, I feel like this is something under my sense of control. And, I'm able to get into that state where I lose a track of time. I lose a sense of myself. Who even am I, right? I'm just a person doing this process. And, it's such an incredible state because I feel that it blends that sense of high performance with spirituality, and that's what really kind of intuitively brought me into this understanding of flow, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love what you said there about the difference. I wrote it down there, the difference between physical and emotional risk. And this channel is largely for men. I do have women that are tapped into this channel as well, because they're really interested in the subject. But the focus is for men. And I think that as men, at least I could say, is like sometimes it's almost easier in a way to have risk physically. I remember I was talking to this very successful financial He's a financial broker, selling mutual funds, helping people plan their retirement. And he said to me, he said, you know what, Nakula, it's really interesting. He says, I've had professional athletes come work for me and they suck. They could take a check on the boards. I'm in Canada, so hockey's the main gig, right? They could take a check on the boards. They could punch it out with a guy. But when I say, hey, call your uncle up and, ask him if, he would take a look at what you're doing, how they freak out. So it's almost like they've exercised the physical risk. They know all about that, but the emotional risk is tough. Do you find that there's a difference between the two in your own experience or working with men?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody has their own approaches and learning styles and a heap of conditioning that, you
Right.
need to tackle that conditioning if you're gonna be able to launch yourself into the flow. Because there could be a lot of barriers, internal blocks for people, that show up constantly. And if you're thinking of a block, you're thinking of something that's the opposite of flow, right? Stuckness.
Right.
Basically a full stop rather than a semicolon or a continuation, right, of
Right.
what you're doing. So yeah, man, I've noticed that in different clients, they have different approaches and different ways. Of course, men, they express themselves more physically as athletes, but then yeah, the emotional side, it depends, right? It depends on the niche, it depends on the area for sure.
Yeah. Like you said, like the artist is putting themselves emotionally. I find as trainers, as coaches, as men who are putting ourselves out there as leaders and saying, "Hey, we can help you transform your life." There's an emotional risk, a reputation risk, who are you to lead others? What you do is crazy. I was blasted all over mainstream media just several months ago, like all over, went viral, post millennial Vice News, mainstream media here in Canada, because I ran in the Canadian election. And then they blasted my semen retention business and semen retention lifestyle to try to discredit me in the political realm. And I just thought, wow, what an emotional risk. And it was, because it was like, to be blasted like that, and have people all around the world sort of making fun of me. But still, I stand here strong today, launching new things, doing better now than I was a few months ago, and continuing to grow. But I know that there's an emotional risk to what we do. Tell me how men who are listening to this, plugged into this, could overcome those emotional risks, whether it's in the bedroom asking a woman to spend the night with them, or to ask them to marry them, or to go on a date. A lot of men feel very challenged in that area, talking to women, or a man who needs to ask for more money from his boss, or needs to make more sales. So he has to ask people if they want to work with him. How is it that how would you coach a man at a high level, a few steps maybe, to actually breaking through those emotional risks that we need to take our life to the next level?
Absolutely. First, it starts all in the mind. It all starts in the mind because the flow state is a mental state, right? We can try to optimize it and make it, in different ways. And by the way, there are lots of street dogs here in India, so they're joining
we
down
were
the
talking,
fun.
we were talking about that before the show. Like, yeah, there might be some street dogs and stuff like that, but
They're
but
always
that's
fighting, man.
oh,
Yeah.
they're just like animals, But
Yeah.
in a way, I love it, because that's the world, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
always a distraction. There's always chaos. In a
Totally.
way, we live in a chaotic world in a way, but yet
Mm.
as men, we're trying to find that flow, that groundedness. How do I
Yeah.
be still and be in flow? Not necessarily still, but how do I be moving in a focused manner when the dogs are fighting, and the government is doing this, and there's we're living in the world of uncertainty right now.
Mm.
A lot of people feel uncertain. I literally was just talking
Yeah.
to a guy about joining my coaching program, right? I've got the Powerhouse Man coaching program, and he's hesitating because he's like, man, things are so uncertain. I don't know financially, right? So I'm gonna deal with
Mm.
that after this. But the dogs barking and everything,
Mm.
it's a great metaphor for the world. So anyways,
Yeah.
not to go off track, but I just love it. So tell us,
Yeah.
how do we break through these emotional barriers
Right.
that we all have to face to take our life to the next level?
Right. Yeah. As I was mentioning, it starts in the mind, and you're right. You have to be that calm at the center of the storm at times. You have to be able to be unfazable and achieve that level of self-mastery and discipline. Again, if you see behind me, I don't know if I can show you, but up there it says just discipline and surrender, right? So if you're
Mm,
missing one of those pieces, you can't really tap into the flow. Um, Discipline is like, again, that it's almost like, the way I think about it is, you want to have both of your hemispheres working together, right?
right.
You both of your brain hemispheres working in synchrony, in synergy. And I think a lot of people, they're not in alignment. They're saying something, they're doing something else. There's this lack of integrity, and that really messes up
Mm,
people's flow. And the first thing that I would definitely say is, and I get a lot of these things from my mentors as well, as I've trained so much in this kind of mindful peak performance field, is to first of all give up expectation and instead appreciate what you do have,
mm.
right? Appreciating the present moment, appreciating and investing your time in presence rather than worrying about what's going to happen or what has happened, in a sense.
That's a risk in itself. I'll just speak from my own personal experience of practicing, like, okay, giving everything to this moment. Because as I'm giving everything to this moment, there's also a little voice that says, "Oh, what about tomorrow's problems?" Or, "Oh man, I really shouldn't have. I made that mistake yesterday." And blah blah blah. Right? Like the mind is tending to bounce from future possibilities. Whether it's problems or to the past of mistakes, regrets, guilts, or shames. So I really appreciate that. When you talk about investing in the present moment with your mind, is there a certain practice or technique that you use to train your mind to be able to do that?
Oh man, I mean, the Flow Zone Academy is full of these practices, right? We try to figure out what are these high performance tools where we can actually start to use them. Yeah. Well, let's take people through a process. Your audience, for instance. So imagine, like, with your pointer finger, right? You imagine that you're pointing at something in the room or wherever you are listening to this right now. You're pointing at something. Now you notice with your eyes, you can kind of zoom into what is in front of you, but then also notice the point of your finger too. So you notice you
Okay.
have this ability to haze out the background, sort of like subtitles in a video,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
right? So with that same kind of intention, I want you to just notice the outline of your body. Okay, almost
Okay.
like you're a character in a video game or a cartoon. You're animated, so you're just feeling the outline of your body very slowly, and you're starting to use your sense of proprioception, which is your sense, you're aware of where you are in the space right now.
Okay.
And now you're being aware of, let's say, very small details like the tip of your nose or the ends of your earlobes or just like a small toe,
Yeah.
just really subtle,
Hmm.
parts. Yeah.
I love this because, well, it's very similar to what I teach when it comes to the alchemy practices, right?
Mm,
Of first of all, becoming so aware, like as I help guys with bedroom performance issues, for example, right? Guys who want to
mhm.
perform better in the bedroom. Like one of the
Yeah,
first things you got to do is get into flow in the bedroom. A lot of guys are in their head, right? You know what I mean? They're
right.
like, right? They're in their
Exactly.
head, all that porn, all that stuff got them like, all in their head. I was like, the first thing actually is you got to become aware of the subtleness of your own body.
Right.
Notice all the subtleties, from the earlobe to the little
Mhm.
toe, notice it all. And then right away, like as soon as you start to do that, I start to focus on the tip of my finger. It was almost like my mind, like you said, became tunnel vision, right? It was like,
Yeah.
whoom. And now I'm like there, right? I'm like, whoom.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. That is the state. Like I know when a man is in the bedroom or he's doing his business or whatever, he's hanging out with his family. If he can whoom, zone in on that, then there's a whole
Yeah.
different presence to him as opposed to, let's say, the regular man whose energy is
Mhm.
scattered everywhere.
Yeah, it's like one is a laser beam, one is a light bulb, right? But it takes the same
Right.
amount of energy in a laser beam that it does in a light bulb. So it's like you
Ooh,
you just have to be able to, right?
I love that.
Hone it in.
Yeah, one is a
Yeah.
laser beam and one is a light bulb. And that's it's like that analogy where it says, like, the sun, for example, shines on a grassy field and nothing happens. I mean, we know things are happening. It's obviously giving light, but for the analogy, to the plain eye, nothing's happening. But if we take a magnifying glass and channel the energy of the sun, we could set that whole thing on fire, right? It's that idea of, is your energy dispersed into a million different things, or is your energy focused into the present moment? And therefore you're like a laser beam. You're setting your world on fire, essentially, in a positive way, because you are literally bringing your energy and your focus into a singular point or a singular effort. And that's what a lot of guys don't realize, is that's the secret to success. No matter what you want to be successful at, whether it's your career, your relationship, your sex life, your spiritual life. A lot of guys who want to advance spiritually, it's like, you got to get serious then. You can't just go to temple or church or synagogue or mosque once in a while, do a few rituals that you don't realize what they even mean, right? And then think, I'm advancing spiritually. No, you got to get serious about it and actually, understand the philosophy, understand the text, and understand the practices. Do the practices, and then you'll get the most results.
Exactly. And that's the one thing that I hear a lot of people say is, oh, yeah, flow is this effortless state. But how do you think you get to that effortlessness? It takes effort, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And so, it's like, one part of the community thinks that, it's like, it's all about surrender and letting go. But in any case, like, what are you letting go of? And like, what are you replacing that emptiness with? In that meditative state of zero consciousness, what are you actively doing? Like, what is your intention, right, with this practice? And I think that's so important to remind people of that intention. Yeah,
100%. And something you said earlier was about, like, working with both hemispheres. And I know that within the alchemy practices that I take guys through, it's all about marrying the masculine and feminine, making sure that the masculine is what's dominant for men, making sure that is, the state that we're living in. So we become that powerhouse man. At the same time, it's about marrying the feminine, right? And understanding how to use the feminine in ourselves. And once we can bring in those two hemisphere, masculine, feminine, sun, moon, all different analogies, yin, yang, Radha, Krishna. Like, there's so many examples in the world's traditions that are talking about this relationship and this marriage between these hemispheres and this masculine, feminine energy for us to achieve, the flow, for us to become successful, for us to self-actualize our purpose here on the planet. And I know, that you're doing this work as well. Now, something that I pulled a post off. Oh, go ahead.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I literally, that's one of the concepts that, we'll be getting into that, the flow cycle, right? But that was something that, like, I was thinking about as you were saying, that is, like, if you look at the flow cycle as yin and yang, it would actually be like yang, struggle phase, push, hustle, right?
Yes.
Then it would be yin, surrender, release phase, letting go.
That's right.
Then it would be yin yang together, which is the flow.
Yes.
Right. And then it's another yin or recovery. And then we go back into yang. So that's
okay.
Like
that's the slide. Okay. Yeah. That's this. Okay. I want to. Yeah. Let's go into that, because I pulled this post from your Instagram. And by the way, guys, I'm going to be leaving. By the way, guys, if you're just tuning in now, make sure you hit the like, the subscribe button, share this out with other guys. Get this information out there. Every single man, in my opinion, is responsible for bringing healthy masculinity back to the planet. And that means you could do your part by sharing this with someone. Hey, I watched this. I listened to this interesting show, this podcast. Get it out. So I invite you to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Also, I'll be leaving all of Sumedh's contact information, his Instagram, his site, all of that stuff in the descriptions below, so you can connect with his work. Make sure you're following him and all that kind of good stuff. He's got some really great content on his Instagram, so I'm pulling up this what you call the flow cycle simplified on your Instagram. And so it's got a starting point. Well, I guess there's no real starting point because it's a circle,
Yeah,
right?
it's a cycle.
But I'm gonna
Facts.
say, okay, I'm gonna say I'm gonna give this the starting point, which is, holy crap, I'm tapped in. All right. So tell us a little bit about that phase of the cycle. What do you mean by holy crap, I'm tapped in?
Yeah, man. Is that the flow phase that I had it down as?
Yeah, what this
Yeah.
is the flow. This is there's holy crap, I'm tapped in, and then there's the next one, which was that was lit. Time to reflect, time
Yeah.
to rest and reflect on that.
Yeah, so
And
that describes the flow state perfectly. Holy crap, I'm tapped in, you know?
right,
Um, but it's kind of a paradox in the sense because when you're thinking about the fact that you're tapped in, you're probably not in flow, right? It's the fact of it's like more of a vibe of holy crap, I'm tapped in,
yeah,
right? And so, yeah, that feeling of, nothing else matters but just that moment. It's just like
yeah,
everything else is just noise to you. But then there's that one melody that you can tune into. That's what I mean by that. Holy
yeah,
crap, I'm tapped in. And flow state is the most addictive state on the planet, right?
yeah.
Scientists
Totally
don't like
is.
to use that word. So they say autotelic, which means it's a reward by itself,
Right.
right? And
Yes, it's
so,
it's both the means and the end, if you will. It's both the goal and the
yeah,
way to the goal kind of thing. There's
exactly.
this funny I don't know if you ever seen this movie Super Bad. It's a bit of an older movie now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Right? You guys, funny movie, right?
yeah.
So there's this part. So I think about the flow state in the bedroom when it comes to men improving their bedroom performance and practicing tantra and being able to give their woman massive pleasure and them also experience much more pleasure. There's this part in the movie where McLovin, he's getting with this girl, and so he penetrates her, right, and he's like, oh, is it in? Is it? Oh, it's in. It's in. He's all like, oh, it's in. It's in. Right? And I just find like clearly like he's not in the flow state in that moment because he's so aware of the senses in the sense like he's so like, am I in? Am I doing it? Yes, I'm doing it. Right. Right. And it's
Yeah,
like
it's
as
that
soon as we do that,
self-consciousness. Yeah,
yeah, as soon as we
exactly.
do that, we actually anchor out of the state of flow.
Yeah.
Right? But once it's almost like we know we're in flow, but if almost we don't acknowledge it and we just stay in it, then we're able to just be in it. And actually that state expands. It's almost expansive where it's like more and more. And again, like you lose time, you lose everything is just kind of zoned in. So, anyways, it just reminded me of that scene in the movie.
Absolutely, man. And I like what you said earlier by, being the powerhouse man. In a sense, you're not going with the flow, you're being the flow. There's a big difference, right?
Mm,
A lot of
yeah,
people think,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, let me just go with the flow." But no, you're actually the one who's saying, "No, this is me being a sovereign right now and like deciding like this is how it's going to be." And
Oof,
so,
one of my favorite
yeah.
words, sovereign.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man.
that's a big word in the political realm right now, at least where I'm in the
Mm,
world, is how sovereign are we to make our own choices
mm.
or not, right? Like that's why I love that word because
Wow.
it's a huge word right now. Not just,
Yeah.
it seems to be all over the world where people are really waking up to asking the question, am I really sovereign or am I not? And what does that
Mm.
really mean to be sovereign? You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, are you gold or are you gold plated?
I love
Mm.
it. Are you gold or are you
Yeah.
gold plated? Oh, that's nice. So, okay, so the first step in the flow cycle simplified is holy crap, I'm tapped in. And if I understand that right, that's when, there's just I'm not going to say there's no thought, but the thoughts are all on point. Everything's on point. You're just like, again, I use the example of like LeBron James on the court or, Cristiano Ronaldo when he's got that ball and he's just moving through players and it's like nobody could touch him. He's,
Yeah.
he's both super alert, but at the same time, he's not having all these excessive thoughts because he's
Mm.
solely focused where he's at. He's totally in that zone. Then the second
Exactly.
step in the cycle you've got that was lit. Time to rest and reflect on that. So can you talk a little bit
Mm.
about the rest and reflection time?
Yeah, that's like the integration phase. The recovery phase is almost like, wow, you've done something tremendous. You've done something amazing. You had this peak experience. It was awesome. When you're in recovery, you're sitting and reflecting. That's when the oxytocin, the love and trust hormone, the serotonin, the meaningfulness hormone kicks in, right? And you're just
Mm,
resting. You're getting that rest. You're maybe getting, you're getting a massage after the workout or whatever,
yeah.
It's that state of like, hey, yeah, I did something really cool. Remember that concert we went to? That was lit, That's that, consolidation or the recovery phase in a sense.
And I know for me, because I'm like an adrenaline junkie, like always chasing the next high, it's like I want to go like, and when I do something, like, that's like really on a high, like even doing this podcast, this conversation, this for me is like a high. It's like, yeah, I'm getting filled up by this conversation of peak performance, of getting into the flow. And I know that sometimes like then I want to like right away chase the next high and then chase the next high, chase the next high. And that's of course for me how I get into like negative cycles, smoking a bunch of pot then and or chasing too many girls or all of that kind of stuff that guys do when we're chasing the next high, and sometimes don't value that rest and integration time.
Exactly, man. And in positive psychology, they actually have a difference between these two states of happiness, right? One is a
Okay.
eudaimonic happiness, which means it's long term, right?
Okay.
And a short term hedonic, like pleasure happiness, which is like very fleeting. It's like really quick. And
And I think
so,
that's what much of the, and I'm guilty as much as anybody else, but over time
yeah,
have been able to try to move myself into that more long-term sort of
yeah,
happiness and allow those, I call them like the little cherries on top, right? Like, oh yeah,
mm,
a night with my wife, a cherry on top, right? Some recognition, you make the sale, cherry on top. But the real
mm.
work is staying like steady and moving through the important tasks that I know need to get done without getting caught, a bit in like just always chasing that high. I would love to get like maybe like to pull out of like an individual and just hear about the world perspective. If you could like look at the world third party and kind of zoom in on it, would you say that we're I would say that we're caught in always chasing that quick fleeting happiness kind of state? Would you agree, disagree, or what would you say is where do you see the world at right now?
Yeah, definitely. And we're being totally overstimulated as a culture with information and, yeah, information overload in a sense at this point. And so, we do need to acknowledge the fact that, there is this stuff that we're not looking at, the shadow work and things like this, right? Because I think a lot of the times we just focus on the good stuff. In positive psychology, I got into it because hey, a lot of psychology is negative psychology, right? There's no like,
Mm,
there were no, studies on winning and like motivation and things like this. And so, when we stopped asking our self the question of what's wrong with us as a culture, but what's right with us, that's when we started that positive psychology movement. Now I think a next level deeper is to acknowledge the negative, like understand that it's there, but then also put our focus into the positive and betterment and growth mindset in a sense rather than a fixed mindset. Or again, it kind of crosses over to so many things, right? Abundance and scarcity, low state flow state, whatever you want to call it, this split mind. um but yeah, I think for a lot of people right now, what they do need is that long-term happiness, and putting their purpose over pleasure is going to be one of the ways that they do that.
oof. Purpose over pleasure. Absolutely. I was talking to my wife about this just a few days ago, where we were talking about this idea of being fulfilled, but not necessarily happy, right? In a moment. We're talking about a particular moment in time. Let's say, for instance, I generally feel fulfilled in my life, because I feel fulfilled in the work that I do. I feel like I'm making a contribution. I know I'm making a difference to the best of my ability. And I know that, like, I'm very secure in that. So I feel very fulfilled. Yet at the same time, there's still unhappiness. Sometimes things don't go my way. Sometimes, there you get bad news. One of our cats, just yesterday we discovered he's got fleas. He's an indoor cat. We're like, how do you got fleas, right? So it's a little bit of distress. It's a little bit like, oh, we got to take him to the vet, all this kind of stuff, right? It's not a big deal, but it's like, it's always coming and going, right? Happiness, distress, no matter what we do. But when we anchor ourselves into a sense of purpose, then there's a deeper fulfillment. And I find that deeper fulfillment is almost like a shelter from my own mind. It keeps me away from the nonsense, because it's like, no, I've got a purpose. I'm on task here. I've got a destiny that I'm going to fulfill, as opposed to just chasing, the next high.
Yeah, and I think like Stephen Kotler even talks about this idea of a bliss junkie, right? He's the guy in the Flow Genome Project. And
Okay.
it's so true. It's like that idea of like in positive psychology, we call it the hedonic treadmill, right? It's like you chase the next high. You're never fully satisfied. It's like you constantly need that chase, rather than understanding that, hey, it's not a static thing. It's not like, end of the flagpole, I did it. It's
Right.
more like it's a process, right? It's that journey, and learning to enjoy the journey has been one of the biggest lessons for me. Uh, and
Yeah.
that's how a lot of people tap into that flow state, when they learn to enjoy it and understand that, hey, this is this intrinsic thing. It's not the certification or the record deal, it's
Right.
none of that. It's more about my character. And as I do these activities, I'm installing these character traits. And it's almost like, installing like accessories in a video game, right? That's like I've
Right.
been able to sort of see my life more gamified in this flow state way.
Yeah.
And that's why I love theater and acting as well, as a way to help people to do that.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of the quote by Marcus Aurelius, and I'm butchering it a bit here, but he talks about like being like a vine that's constantly growing, and then when a grape produces itself, the vine doesn't just stop there and go, yes, I produced one grape type of thing. It enjoys the grape, it's fulfilled that, but it just keeps going, and then it produces another one and keeps going. So he talks about this idea of doing one act and then moving on to the next act very seamlessly. And this act may produce some fruit that you like. So you get that, maybe that heightened pleasure, right? You get that activity of maybe some sense pleasure or some heightened experience of like, wow, that was really high. Sex to me is like that. Sex is a grape, right? That's I train guys. It's like, but if you put all your world into that grape, you're bound to suffer, because you're supposed to be like the vine keeping going, and then you get these grapes along the way, which, add that extra juice and flavor to life. So it kind of reminded me of, what Marcus Aurelius was saying of like, stay like the vine, just keep going, keep moving from one act to the next in a seamless state. It's not about a singular destination, but again, enjoying
Mm,
that journey and really building and molding your character. I believe it was
yeah.
Desmond Tutu who said that you are becoming, you are perfection becoming. So you're not perfect as you are, but you're becoming perfection. And that's a becoming.
Mm,
It's something that you're cultivating, as opposed to, oh, I'm now perfect. In fact, as soon as you say I'm now perfect, that's when the imperfection begins to come
right.
into play, right? So same thing. It's like McLovin. He enters the girl. It's like, oh, I'm in. So she's all
Mm,
hot for him, and then as soon as he loses his masculinity, he's all like,
mm,
oh, I'm in. Again, it's like the whole connection is cut off in that moment.
yeah. Definitely, man. I love the fact that you brought up stoicism. That's really helped me through a bunch of hard times, and
Mm,
that concept of amor fati. I love my fate. That no matter what happens, like I'm gonna live my life like I chose this, like I selected it on the video game. And
that's
I was
right.
the one who said that. Okay, these are my circumstances. So what? My turn. and that mindset is so powerful when you're able to, basically flip the script on life, right? That
That's right.
ability to reframe life, and no matter what happens to you, you can always have that mindset of, acceptance in a sense.
That's right. I believe it was Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. He said something very similar. Act as if whatever happens is designed for you. Right. So
Exactly.
it's like you
Yeah.
perceive something as negative, and to recognize that. And Marcus Aurelius also says something similar, where he says that realize nothing is happening to you, but rather for you. If God will only act in his own best interest. If the whole of nature will only ever act in its best interest. So if you see something that is happening to you and you're like, this is not good, he's like, you're disconnected from the whole, because the whole will never do anything that is negative towards its own interest. And so he challenges our ideas on death. He challenges our ideas on sickness, that if somehow these things are with us, then it is prescribed for us for betterment of the whole. And if we recognize that our job is to get better, and that we recognize that God, universe, whatever name you may call or know God by, or the universe by, that living entity never wants negative for you, because that would be wanting negative for itself, and God never wants that. Right. Right. And so it's like, once you can
Exactly.
kind of wrap your mind around that, it's like, oh, everything that's happening to me. And this is a tough pill to swallow, because this is where you get the question of, how could you say that when there are women getting raped right now?
Hmm.
There is sickness right now. There is death. There's disease. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, but we have to ask the bigger picture of, why does it exist? And how does it all help us unfold our humanity? It's a very
Hmm.
difficult
Yeah.
conversation to have, but I recognize that the men who are intelligent enough, wise enough to have those
Yeah.
conversations and face those harsh realities, they also tend to do the best in life.
For sure, man. And that's what I was saying earlier about the shadow work. Like all the stuff that's been stuffed down, all the celebrities, there's things coming out now that they've hidden and they can't hide it any longer. It's like, it's coming to that point. And so, it's like trying to put a bouncy ball in a swimming pool. It's like it's going to pop up in some way, right? And so you might as well not repress it. You've got to deal with your emotions like guests, have them come in, drink some tea with it, and then they leave. You don't want to lock the door on them and keep them out. They're going to come in with a battering ram after a certain point of time, and
Yeah.
so that's what it's about. It's about letting, like, I believe it was a Zen master who said, keep your front door and your back door open, in a sense where you just let your thoughts flow through, and don't
Right.
capture one where it's like, don't make it a roommate, in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Don't make it a
Mm.
roommate. I love that.
Mm.
We're gonna wrap up here in just a few minutes, but I want to keep going through this flow cycle. So we talked about the idea of, holy crap, I'm tapped in. Then there's that idea of, that was lit. Time to rest and reflect. We talked about that. Then you've got this next step or statement that says, whoa, this is sort of challenging, which I think we've talked about. That challenge of letting things set in. I tend to talk about the ebb and flow, like an ocean. Where I live, I'm on the east coast of Canada, on the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is literally 2-minute walk from my house, and it's the highest tides in the world where I live. So here, people are very present, if they're present to nature, to ebbs and flows. That the fact is that there's a breath in and a breath out. And I kind of gather the being in the flow state, or staying in that state's a bit like that. There's this masculine time for exertion, penetrate. It's outward. It's focus. It's like positive outward. It's like, I'm going out, I'm creating, I'm hustling, I'm grinding, I'm getting things done. And then there's this time of feminine, negative rest state of like, oh, and it can be challenging. I know, not just for men, but for women. I find, again, the world is so overstimulated. Is there anything that you can share with us that would help men value that relaxation or that integration time?
Hmm. Yeah, I think for a lot of men, they need to work on groundedness. I think that's a primary focus. If they want to build a healthy and strong foundation of their flow, they've got to be able to connect with their bodies in some way. So just
Mm,
as simple as, let's say, let's use the example of, talking to women. If you're just simply going in and tapping your foot to the music of the nightclub, or where you're at, right? Just that simple activity of you doing that is going to get you into the rhythm, in sync with what's going on around you. Someone tapped into the flow state sees that a girl is sitting down with two drinks, not one, right? Someone who's unconscious and going mindlessly, they're going to make a comment like, "Are you here with someone?" Like, not even recognizing, what's right in front of them, right? Let's say a girl is jogging somewhere, running somewhere. It's like someone in flow knows that, okay, she's probably exercising, right? She's probably going for a run or something. If you see someone going around like this, you know that they're maybe a tourist. They're
right.
kind of taking their time, right? And so this level of intuition, I would definitely just say, look out for different signs in your environment. That will definitely help you calm down, reflect, and restore in that period of rest and digest, right? Where basically you're having a deep, meaningful conversation with someone. That really helps the vagus nerve, by the way.
Mm,
That connected socialization, right? Which we're missing a lot of nowadays because we're all in lockdown, right? In
yeah.
that sense. So, it's really important that you get that from somewhere, so get on your like Zoom meetings with friends, get that tribe going, get the banter up, get the
Right.
vibes uplifted. And I think that, just it's not that same kind of hustle mentality that we were introduced to. I think it's more about alignment now. I think flow state is the new hustle. I think people are starting to
Right.
realize that, this is a different way to play this game. And it's a lot easier than I thought it was. It's actually takes less effort in a sense, not less effort, but it's like, you put the effort in and then you become almost a person who weaves with the craft, like a musician who's learned their musical instrument and now they can improvise with it.
That's right, and again, that's the idea of effortlessness, or like again
Yeah,
from Lao Tzu, Wu Wei, right, from the Taoist
exactly.
tradition, Wu Wei, right, effortless
Yeah,
action, and I think the mistake people think is effortless, meaning the musician who's a talented musician and who has put in the craft. Like for instance, I know a lot of people, like for example, let's say someone like Beyonce, right, or like Jay-Z or somebody, right, like they're like, man, he's so effortless in his flow. Like if you listen to Jay-Z's flow, or like, it's so effortless. But I was like, yeah, but he put so much effort to make it sound effortless. So now
exactly.
it's effortless action. I heard this story about Lil Wayne, which was really funny. So Fabulous was doing a track, and this is when Lil Wayne, and I'm not really plugged into hip hop that much right now, so I named these older rappers, right? Because this is right, but Fabulous was saying like this was when Lil Wayne, and maybe he still is, was at just the height of the game. So they wanted to have Lil Wayne feature on one of Fabulous's tracks. It was $100,000 plus they asked for 4 bottles of Cristal, right? They 100,000 plus 4 bottles of Cristal for Lil Wayne to come and do this track, and Lil Wayne was on tour. So they got the 4 bottles of Cristal. They paid the 100 grand, right? Because it was worth it to have Lil Wayne like be on his track, right? He thought he thought Fabulous and his crew they were laughing about this after. They're saying he thought like they were gonna come in and all pop bottles of Cristal together and be like, like there was gonna be this whole like hangout session, blah blah blah. He said Lil Wayne and his crew pulled up in the tour bus, comes in, hears the song for the first time, drops his verse all within 15 minutes, makes his 100 G's. They grab the 4 bottles of Cristal and they're back out on the road. Right? And I was like, damn, that is a guy in flow. That's a guy who's like, see, he's
Way.
not getting caught in the, yeah, Wu Wei, effort, Wu Wei. And he said, Fabulous talked about how it was so like he came in, he heard the beat, he was so focused, he dropped this hot track, this hot verse, and then he was gone. And it was just like, whoa, what just happened there, right? And I'm like, that's effortless action. But if you listen to Lil Wayne and the way he thinks and he talks, you could see it's taken a lot of effort. The guy's super intelligent. He's smart. He's focused. You could see that that's why he gets paid 100 grand. It's not 15 minutes. Most guys are like, oh, you made 100 grand in 15 minutes. I'm like, he didn't make 100 grand in 15 minutes. That was a result of 20 years of effort, of getting it down to a science. He's packed. I was like, you see, he made 100 grand in 15 minutes. What I see is a guy who's put 20 years in of hustling and grinding and putting in more effort than most people. Hence now, he's worth 100 grand in 15 minutes. And I think that's the mindset. To me, that's the powerhouse man. Some guys ask me, oh, your coaching package is expensive. I'm like, my coaching package is cheap. I've been at this as a decade, putting in work. The reason I can help you in 15 minutes be better in the bedroom or get over some issue is because I put in 10 years of effort, of reading, of seminars. You pay me 5 grand for a coaching package. I've spent over 50 grand in my own development. Plus,
yeah, man.
I was like, that's what you don't see, but that's what you got to understand if you want to hit the next level.
Yeah, I'm so reminded of this story of like there was this guy who came to fix a ship, right? And it was like, he charged like $10,000 or whatever is expensive for something. He just kind of went in there 2 seconds and came out,
Yeah,
yeah. And he was like, well, why is it so expensive? He's like, well, it was $1 for my services, but it was like 9,999, like the rest, for knowing where to tap.
That's right, for the knowledge. This is what guys who don't invest in themselves don't understand. They don't value knowledge. They want the result, but they don't want to put the effort in to acquire the knowledge to be able to produce the result effortlessly.
Exactly.
Again, back to Wu Wei. And to me, it's the difference between a guy who's in the flow state, which, it's a guy, what I call a powerhouse man, right? It's like, it's a guy who understands that it's better to invest now and get your knowledge and mind in the right place. And then when you hit the field or you go to do the activity, it's going to seem so effortless, but it takes effort. It takes effort to get into effortlessness.
Exactly, man. And it's such a paradox, right? It's like you become the walking sweet spot after a while when you're in flow, because it's the mind of no mind, or Mushin, but then it's also all mind. So in a sense, it's like, okay, yes, I'm maneuvering my mind at the same time I'm stepping out of it. I can press pause on the video game,
right,
so I can crush it again.
Yeah. So I could take that break, that rest, give it a break, come back, and then knock it out the park. So listen, man, I feel like I could talk to you all day long. It was just like that on the pod. You had me on your podcast. So tell everybody a little bit out there, if there's some guys out there, they're interested in connecting with your podcast, your Instagram, connecting with your coaching program. Tell them what's the best way to get in touch with you and to continue to follow your work as a tool to getting themselves into that flow state.
Absolutely, man. So thank you again for this opportunity, man. Basically, you guys can find me at Flowzone Academy on Instagram. That's FLOZONE Academy. And also flowzoneacademy.com. All my links are on there. And yeah, I have Enter the Flow Zone podcast, which Nakula was on. A great podcast. Definitely check that one out if you haven't already. And yeah, man, from there, just shoot me a DM. That's the quickest way to contact me, and then we can start talking about this. My 12-week program is called Flomo Sapien, Unstuck Yourself in 12 Weeks, where, we go through all of the chakra points, and we basically, we deal with the trauma that's blocking you in a sense of achieving your flow. And then we go into integrating your character and really realizing, how can we create your own autotelic personality? How can we maneuver it in such a way where you become basically, a person who is a Jedi in your craft.
I love it. A Jedi in your craft. I love it. I love it. Fellas, go connect with Sumedh, connect with his podcast, connect with, his work. and give yourself more tools to be able to achieve the state, the flow state, which is the state where you're going to become a powerhouse, both in and outside the bedroom. And look, if you're tuning into me the first time, you could go in. If you're interested in learning more about how to get into that flow state in the bedroom, then check out the free ejaculation control guide. I've got that in the description underneath Sumedh's information. You could do that. And of course, you can always check out my website at nakuladas.com so you can get a list of all. This is episode 1. But I got tons of great guests lined up for you, so you can go ahead and binge watch a bunch of episodes and, check out some more of the programs and information there. Again, in the age of the internet, there's no excuse. Everybody, every single man out there can become a powerhouse. Every single man can hit that flow state. The information is there, the expertise, the mentorship, the guidance is all available. That's the beauty of this age we live in. So don't get distracted by all that nonsense and porn and Instagram girls and all that kind of crap. Put all that aside and become the man that you're destined to be, that powerhouse man that you know you are. That's why you're watching this right now. And invest in yourself. Yes, money, but time and effort, most importantly. All right, guys, I really appreciate you. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.